so happy to be introducing this movie. Well, we'll talk about it, but I asked to do this, and then they said, would you mind if Patricia Kelly joined you? I'm like, would I mind? No, I wouldn't, and I was so thrilled, and here she is, Miss Patricia Kelly. Well, shall we sit?
We should sit if I can get up on this stool here.
Gosh.
Gracefully. Okay. Wow, those lights are really bright.
They really are.
Well,
They're blinding. But this is a very intimate space. I like this space.
But I feel like I'm in some kind of about to land the spaceship or something.
It's a little
It really is. I'm sorry, but I can't see any of your faces.
It's better that way. Believe me, as a comedian, you don't want to see their faces.
Well, no, interesting that you say that, because that was one of the issues that Gene had when he was performing in the clubs and clubs around Chicago and in the theaters in Broadway. He preferred it that he could not see the faces.
It's the absolute. When I came up in the comedy clubs, it was the same thing, and they're right there, and you don't want to see them. But once you get into like a Broadway house, usually the lights blind you, and you don't see them as much. But film, that's why you can just do it and not have to worry about it until later.
But interestingly, Gene preferred Broadway because he preferred the interaction with the audience to the film, because he said it was so strange. You do a number, but there was no reaction, and whereas with Broadway, he could hear the audience and turn it one way or another. And by the way, I'm going to be able to stick around for this, and I have my cards that I'll give out to you. So please, I'll be seated in the back there. So make sure and say hello after this is over. So
she has cigar boxes of cards. Get one.
Yes, I brought a lot of them.
Patricia, this is my favorite MGM musical, and I know that's a little blasphemous to say sometimes, but I love this film so much. I asked to do this, and I think I like it because it's a little darker and more serious, but it's still, there are parts of it that are hilarious also. And I want to know how you feel about this film.
Well, I agree with you 100%, and it's interesting. It is a bit blasphemous, but I think this script by Betty Comden and Adolph Green is just magnificent. I think it's sharp, it's subtle, it's funny. It maintains the humor and I think, in fact, it really applies almost more now than it did in 1955. Yeah. The dialogue and what they're experiencing, I think, is very relevant.
And originally it was conceived as a sequel to On the Town?
Yes, that was the hope.
That was the hope. But the studio didn't want Sinatra or Jules.
No.
Is that true?
Sinatra didn't want the studio. When Sinatra doesn't want something, he doesn't do it. But he had been burned by the studio. They had excised so many of his numbers. And that's what happens in films. They would record things, and Gene did a beautiful version of "I've Got a Crush on You" for American in Paris. He thought it was he said I could have made a living singing that song, and it was cut. It was a ballad, and it slowed down the picture. So they ended up cutting a lot of Frank's numbers, Boys and Girls, from "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" and things like that, and so he was not. Yeah, so you get Michael Kidd, and you get Dan Dailey, and Dan Dailey is a very good dancer.
Really good, and a wonderful actor. He's kind of part of the reason this film is pretty dark and serious. His character, as far as his drinking, and even though he does a number.
Gene said that the drunken number, it was very, very difficult, and that he executed it beautifully. There is one myth about Michael Kidd did a single number for this, and go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you about that, and that there was a disagreement about it between him and Stanley. Is that true?
Well, no, they said that Gene, don't read anything.
Yeah, there's
just,
so much that's been said about this film, and I said to her, I want to know what you know about it.
Yeah, do not go on the internet. Do not go on Wikipedia. I just heard on Wikipedia it said that I got married when I was 30 years old. I was 31.
When you have a sore throat, don't go on WebMD. Just don't do it. You go down a rabbit hole.
So Michael Kidd they shot this number for Michael, and it was cut out. It slowed down the picture at that point, and so what you will read is that Gene cut the number because he felt that Michael Kidd outperformed him in it, and that is just so not true. Because Gene's whole philosophy was, and I'm sure it's your sensitivity too, is that you surround yourself by the best, and only by having the best around you, that's what elevates you. You don't cut people out because they did a fabulous job. You cut things out if they don't work in the film. So and that was Gene.
He obviously loved Michael Kidd. He worked with him.
Hello,
he
Dolly.
hired him for Hello, Dolly, which, by the way, is another one of my favorite movies.
We'll do that next year.
I would love to. They did it a few years ago. I love that film, and every time it's on. In fact, when they showed it on the big screen, I went to see it, and it's brilliant.
People always forget that Gene directed it.
Oh, I don't.
Yeah.
No, I knew that. I never knew the Carol Channing one. I didn't know it, so that was my first introduction to Hello, Dolly, and I was like, my head blew off. It was.
Have you seen Guide for the Married Man?
No.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So the cast of Robert Morse starred in it with Walter Matthau, and we lost Robert Morse this week, but the cast is phenomenal. It's every comedian of the time: Lucille Ball, Jack Benny, Terry Thomas. It's just exquisite. So, but it's kind of and the music is by a guy named Johnny Williams.
The composer, the brilliant soundtrack.
Are you enjoying this? We're not even talking about this movie. Sorry. I guess we're supposed to talk about this movie.
The other thing I read, and I want to, that Stanley and Gene didn't speak after this film. Is that
true? And that's
true?
the word. I don't even know how that one started. But that is the most predominant lie that's out there. I have I inherited all of Gene's archives, and I have so many letters between Gene and Stanley after that day. There was no breakup at all. Stanley Gene's whole idea of including Stanley as a co-director was to try to give Stanley a leg up so he would be able to go off on his own and make pictures. And that's what happened. And he achieved what he wanted. Stanley used to spend the night at Gene's house. He'd sleep on the couch very often. He was like a son to Gene. And so there's so much correspondence between them. And I have one note that Stanley sent to Gene on what would have been Gene's 80th birthday. And it said basically, I love you, I owe you my career, and I will always love you. And so let's just dispense with all it. What bothers me about the myths is that I think they distract from the genius of this picture. This is an extraordinary picture. And one of the things, this is shot in CinemaScope.
Yeah. It was the first one he directed in CinemaScope, am I correct?
Yeah, and they all thought CinemaScope was going to be the new thing, and then all the theaters decided that they didn't want to change out all of their equipment for CinemaScope, so it went nowhere. So you have to show this film on television, you have to pan and scan, and as Gene said, it worked out for him because he's in the middle. He's the middle guy. But it really doesn't work for dance. It's not a good, Gene said it's not a good...
but it looks pretty great. It really does. It looks beautiful. And his I Like Myself, that number is so beautiful. And is that one of his last solo MGM numbers he ever filmed?
No, because he went on to do Les Girls and other things, and Invitation to the Dance, but it's always Can It Be I Like Myself by the great the wunderkind Andre Previn, who wrote it. I just found the lead sheet in Andre Previn's handwriting that's in the archives. It was in the bottom of a box. It's for this number, and when you watch it, Gene thought this was the best number that he ever put over.
It's amazing.
And you watch
those roller skates. I don't know how he did it, because I keep thinking he's gonna fall on his ass any second. They're not locked. They're rolling. The athleticism, well, that's what he did, but that's phenomenal.
He was a great skater. He wanted to be a hockey player in Pittsburgh, but there was no professional team, so he gave up on that. But he used to skate up and down Rodeo Drive with the skates. The skates are the kind that you turned with a key. He bought them at the hardware store in Beverly Hills, and Carl Reiner used to live kind of catty corner to our house, and Gene would just skate up and down Rodeo Drive. But he used to do an amateur night show with his younger brother on the roller skates, and they had little short pants, and then they did kip-ups and things. So they were doing more aggressive things, acrobatic things, than you'll even see. How many of you have seen this? We can't see you, but how many of you have seen it? So quite a few of you. Okay, and then there's some newbies here too, right?
And then let's talk about Dolores Gray for a second too, because she's hilarious in this, and both her numbers, especially Thanks a Lot but No Thanks. It's one of my favorite numbers in the history of MGM musicals. How was that conceived? I mean, who conceived the whole thing with there's trap doors, and you'll see it. I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, no, don't give it away. She was I won't mention any names, but she was the girlfriend of somebody, and that's how she got the role in the picture. So.
I met her once. I did a cabaret talk show with her once. Yeah, this was like in the 80s. I don't even remember. It's all a blur. Time has passed and it's all a blur.
The roller skate, just back to the roller skating. So pay attention when you see the roller skating number. Gene specifically skates, rolls. So you see he tap dances and then he rolls. So you can see that there's no fakery in it.
That's what I mean. They're not locked. It's not like they're not locked to protect him.
And then also it really creates what Gene's whole thing was to be able to change the look of dance on film and literally take it into the streets or take it onto the sidewalks. And one of the things, because when you have dance, it's a three-dimensional art form, and when you put it on film, you lose that third dimension. So Gene was always looking for ways, how do you make it appear kinetic and three-dimensional? So one of the things you do is you skate, you move toward the camera moves, you move, and you would never look at this. I don't think you don't look at this and think, oh, that looks really flat.
Never. Yeah. I don't think, I mean, look, he used rain, he used garbage cans, he used roller skates, he used, newspaper. He was brilliant and innovative and unbelievable. And I have to just say this, the way you have protected his legacy and with so much integrity, and just protected his legacy, his life. You archived everything. You met him. You basically, the beginning of your life with him was you were writing his biography.
Story, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yes. So you've been archiving his life since you met him.
Yeah, I'm 63 now, and I met him when I was 26. So 24 hours a day, pretty much. You count. You let me know how many. I haven't ever totaled that up, but thank you very much.
Oh, it's true. There's people that sell off stuff just for them, and you never did that.
No, it would pay my rent, but I think it should be together. I think it should all, and it's all going to go up in a cloud, so you'll all be able to access. So when I kick the bucket, you'll all have an opportunity. Or when I go take a left turn at Pasadena, I think Gene had two phrases for dying.
Taking a left turn at Pasadena.
Yeah, kick the bucket, or I like kick the bucket.
I like taking a left turn at Pasadena. In fact, I'm going to drive there right now. Do a tight 10 at the Ice House.
So Gene did say that the trash can lid number was exceptionally difficult. When you see that, just not to break the ankles was pretty tough on that.
Yeah, that looked that whole number is epic too. It just goes, because you don't see it coming, then all of a sudden they do it.
I know.
You're like, what?
And he did say that one big regret that he had was that he did not do a number with Sid in this movie. So they shot a number with Sid Charisse and it didn't work. And so when we watched it, the boxing scene, just watch her clothes in this boxing. I want them all.
They're beautiful, and they look so tight. And then the the way it's made, she gets to move those
Well,
legs.
there are a couple different skirts involved, but you don't really know that, do you? Yeah.
There's a couple of different. She walks in the tight one and dances in a slightly
Well,
looser
I'm not
one.
going to go in. So
It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite numbers.
It's gorgeous.
And no one danced like her.
No.
She just, the way she walked, it was just, when she walked across the screen, she was thrilling. This number, if you haven't seen it, it's
And when I made
one of the
Gene watch all the movies, he didn't like watching his own movies because he'd always see things he wished he'd done better. Like he wished he'd held his leg up higher when in Jerry the Mouse because he had to drop it to keep Jerry in the frame. So it's not a perfect balletic position. You all noticed that, right? So when we ran it, he saw the number with Sid in the boxing match, and he said, I need to call her and tell her how great she was. And right there, we were sitting in the study, and he picked up the phone and called Sid and told her. And I just, that's the kind of guy he was. He was just, and so thank you for your comments about promoting the legacy, but he was a man of such decency and really so bright and such a Renaissance man. So it's a privilege to be able to do it.
like him.
But it's nice to be with you.
It's great
We
to
haven't met
No, we
before,
never
and
met.
we've already, we've exchanged everything.
everything. I gave her everything. I have one more
I was
question.
going to pawn off his husband, but I stopped
And
at
I was
that.
telling her, my husband, who 30 years, Jerry Dixon, who's a Broadway actor and he's a director.
know him.
Yeah, he's amazing. He did the original years ago. I think it was in the late '80s, I think it was the late '80s. It was the original pilot episode of Star Search, but it wasn't called Star Search. And Gene was the host and the judge, and he had nothing but glorious things to say about your husband. He was very kind to him, so which is not a surprise. Did he have a favorite dance partner?
He was always very diplomatic about that. He did not have a favorite partner because each partner was chosen just for the particular role that they played, and they're not interchangeable. You can't put Debbie Reynolds in American in Paris. You can't put Leslie Caron in Singing in the Rain. But he was very cheeky, and he did say that his favorite was Jerry the Mouse, who showed up on time. He knew his lines, and he worked his little tail off.
And he didn't get in the way.
Did sometimes.
Well, this
And
was.
there are 24 of Jerry's per second, by the way. There are
24 frames a
drawings.
second.
It's 24.
That's the.
So there are about 3,258 Jerry's, all done by different people. So he gets taller, and then he gets fatter, and then he gets taller. Yeah, we're not talking about this movie. We should. But I love this movie. I'm so happy to be here with you, and I so appreciate that you all showed up to see this, because it isn't the one that I keep trying to get
It's
people
not
to
the one
show
that people
this.
talk about. And when I first saw it, I was like, why isn't this one? And it critically did really well, but box office wise, it didn't. I think it gained its following years later.
I think and I think if it were shown more now, it would have a lot more traction, but it just isn't shown. And all this mythology, I think, really gets in the way of it. So I think you and I can just keep busting those myths.
I
about
agree.
it.
We will. Just
Yeah.
don't read anything. Just watch the picture. It's
And then
magnificent.
just call me. And my email is on my card. You'll have it. You can send me a note. I do respond. Just if you don't hear from me, then send it again, because it probably went into spam. And I know I'm going to hear from
No,
you.
you're gonna hear from me. You're gonna hear from me, ladies and gentlemen. Patricia Kelly.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you were here.